This is the dominoes, dude. This is the dominoes falling. Like the events that have unfolded so far have led to this real fissure. The president posting a stake-sponsored photo is wild. Casino takeover of culture is reaching endgame where the only question is, oh my God, all my ops are aligned with one another. It is crazy. All my ops, dude. That's unbelievable. Let's see what Donald Trump is saying here. I know why Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens, and Alex Jones have been fighting me for years, especially by the fact that they think it's wonderful for Iran, the #1 state sponsor of terror, to have a nuclear weapon because they have one thing in common: low IQs. They're stupid people. They know it. Their families know it. And everyone else knows it too. Oh my God, it's so long. Look at their past. Look at their record. They don't have what it takes, and they never did. They've all been thrown off television, lost their shows, and aren't even invited on TV because nobody cares about them. They're nut jobs, troublemakers, and will say anything necessary for some free and cheap publicity. Now they think they get some clicks because they have third-rate podcasts, but nobody's talking about them, and their views are the opposite of MAGA. Or I wouldn't have won the presidential election in a landslide. Yeah, except you're doing a presidential crash out on a bunch of podcasters, and obviously if they were irrelevant, you wouldn't be doing that. Okay, that's number one. Number two, and perhaps even more significant than that, is that you won by a landslide in an election where people were feeling the impact of the inflation and also were frustrated by, you know, the war, the genocide that was going on. Okay, and not only that, but you position yourself as a no new wars candidate, and now you're going against that. So yes, on the one hand, you obviously have your cult who will stand by you no matter what, but it's ridiculous to claim that like this is what you won the election for. It's the exact opposite. You are not following through on the spirit of MAGA, unless, if we're being really honest about it, and Trump certainly is, the spirit of MAGA is what Donald Trump wants it to be, and just gave CNN a 100% approval rating of Trump, not hand-flailing fools like Tucker Carlson, who couldn't even finish college. He was a broken man when he got fired from Fox, and he's never been the same. Perhaps you should see a good psychiatrist, or Megyn Kelly, who nastily asked me the now famous only Rosie O'Donnell question, or crazy Candace Owens, who accused the highly respected First Lady of France of being a man when she is not. Ooh, you shouldn't bring that up. That's like one of Candace's most popular positions, I think. And you just kind of look like you're defending France, which you never want to be doing. And will hopefully win lots of money in the ongoing lawsuit. Oh my God, you're hoping that a French person that is associated with Macron defeats an American conservative commentator in a lawsuit about false accusations of being trans. Oh my God, this is worse than Trump being like, I love Israel. I put Israel before Americans. From the perspective of like his own fan base, he could just get away with saying like, I love Israel. Israel's the greatest country on earth, whatever, right? They also are evangelical Zionists anyway. But this unironically hits, dude. This hits Trump's base directly on the head. He's coming across like he's in support of not just any Frenchman, but Macron. He's coming across as disparaging trans panic adjacent rumor, which again, his base eats up. It's very crazy. Actually, to me, the First Lady of France is a far more beautiful woman than Candace. In fact, it's not even close. Crazy. Or bankrupt Alex Jones, who says some of the dumbest things. Okay, again, he's bankrupt because he fought for conservatism from the perspective of like Republicans, right? Who says some of the dumbest things and lost his entire fortune, as he should have, for his horrendous attack on the families of Sandy Hook shooting victims, ridiculously claiming it was a hoax. You might as well yell at Alex Jones for being an anti-vaxxer next. What the... Buddy, you went on a show after he did that. Oh my God, what a fake friend he is. I don't know how to feel about this. I feel like this might actually cause a real fissure in the base. It's clear that he's been watching the movement taking place on the independent media side, and he knows that like independent media is fully pulled out, right? The podcasters don't with him no more. Even Joe Rogan is like anti-Israel now, or anti-Israel curious at least. He's clearly been bottling up all of this anger and resentment about his most loyal servants in independent media. And he's basically lost them. Who does he have on the Republican side? On the independent media side? Who does he have remaining? Ben Shapiro? Ben Shapiro's done. He's dead. He's got nothing. It doesn't make any sense. He's got Cat Turd and Erica Kirk and Ben Shapiro. Patrick Bet David, I guess. This is the bridge day he was talking about. He's burning all of them. Yeah, it turns out he's not burning bridges in Tehran. He's burning bridges in the United States of America. These so-called pundits are losers, and they always will be. Now, fake news CNN, the failing New York Times, and all the other radical left news organizations are hailing them and giving them positive press for the first time in their lives. They're not MAGA. They're losers just trying to latch on MAGA. As president, I could get them on my side anytime I want to, but when they call, I don't return their calls because I'm too busy on world and country affairs. Oh my God. He sounds like such a... I'm too busy doing presidential work. I'm too busy being president. I'm dealing with the country and the world. I don't have any time except for writing this long effort post about them. They go nasty just like Marjorie Trader Brown, but I no longer care about that stuff. Yeah, even though I'm talking about it clearly, and it definitely do care about it quite a bit. I only care about doing the right for our country. MAGA is about winning and strength in not allowing Iran to have nuclear weapons. MAGA is about making America great again, and these people have no idea how to do that, but I do because the United States is now the hottest country anywhere in the world, President Donald J. Trump. This is the dominoes, dude. This is the dominoes falling, right? Like the events that have unfolded so far have led to this real fissure. First, it was the Epstein stuff, right? Donald Trump comes out and fucking talks shit about Jeffrey Epstein and like farms the conspiracy right, and then totally pivots away from it. Yeah, this was the reason why he's coming after Tucker. We'll watch that first. Tucker cooked his ass in a way that I think is actually pretty thoughtful, weirdly enough. I still don't trust him, obviously. I still think what Tucker Carl... Here, I know what the game is right now, by the way. I think what Tucker Carlson is doing is establishing as much legitimacy and credibility as possible in the anti-Israel flank so that he can either personally run and take over the MAGA base, which he will be able to, regardless of what Trump is saying right now, or potentially he will lend that credibility to like a JD Vance. Okay? He's already positioned himself as like claiming that there are voices inside of the White House that are actively fighting against Donald Trump waging war in Iran at the behest of Israel. And you can tell he's talking about JD Vance without openly saying it. So I think Tucker Carlson is either going to lend his credibility to JD Vance that he has developed in this space. He will be either a kingmaker or he will run himself. Okay?
Who do you think you are? You're tweeting out the F word on Easter morning? You'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah. So obviously you're mocking the religion of Iran. Okay. If you seek a religious war, that's a good idea. But by the way, no decent person mocks other people's religions. You may have a problem with the theology. Presumably you do if it's not your religion, and you can explain what that is. But to mock other people's faith is to mock the idea of faith itself. And
dude, he is so... God. I can feel as soon as this is published, as soon as this video was published, I can literally sense every Bangladeshi unk spreading this far and wide in every WhatsApp group you have ever thought of, and many you will never even see. Okay? This is a nuclear bomb for the ummah, okay? The entire Islamic world saw a white man who looks white as shit, by the way, like not just any white man, but one of the whitest, sitting in his log cabin, wearing a poplin shirt on the president for disrespecting Islam. I'm telling you right now, every unk will forever be every Muslim unk will forever be a fedayeen for Tucker Carlson. Okay? Like they already love Jackson Hinkle, right? They love Jackson Hinkle. And they now forever will demonstrate absolute loyalty to Tucker Carlson.
Should never mock that. because at its core is the acknowledgement that we are not in charge of the universe. We did not build it. We won't be here at the end of it. We can destroy life. We cannot create it because we are not God. The message of all faith.
Yeah, there's two things that will give you forever praise from Muslim unks and aunties all around the world. If you're a white guy or a Christian and you revert to Islam, it's over, okay? It doesn't matter how fake or phony it is. Andrew Tate is a great example of this. He never actually converted to Islam at all. He just simply said it, and then everybody loved it. They literally went crazy mode for him. Muslims love a white Christian or just any Christian converting to Islam. They will literally put you on the highest pedestal possible. That's number one. Number two, if you defend against Islamophobia, if you defend Muslims against Islamophobia, if you defend the faith, oh my God, as a white guy, as a Christian, oh my God, is the highest praise of all time.
At the biggest picture level is the message in our Bible, which is you are not God. And only if you think you are do you talk this way. But it's not just mockery of Islam. And no president should mock Islam. That's not your job. This is not a theocracy. We don't go to war with other theocracies to find out which theocracy is more effective. We are not a theocracy. And God willing, we never will be, because theocracies corrupt the religion. No, this is a mockery not just of Islam. It's a mockery of Christianity. To send out a tweet with the F word on Easter morning promising the murder of civilians and then saying praise be to Allah without explaining any of it, you are mocking me and every other Christian because we're Christians. We can't support that. That is evil. That is an intentional desecration of beauty and truth, which is the definition of evil.
Yeah, no, this is perfectly crafted, right? Perfectly tailored message. He establishes position of authority as like a true Christian who loves God and loves Christianity and shits on the excesses of Trump. Okay. But here are the other reasons, right? Like, number one, Candace Owens, the 25th Amendment needs to be invoked. He's a genocidal lunatic. Our Congress and military need to intervene. We are beyond madness. Okay. Candace Owens said that, 114 likes. I can't even like it because I'm blocked by Candace Owens. Candace Owens, unblock me. I'm a clandestine operator. I've given you money. Please. Then Megyn Kelly. Megyn Kelly also had some choice words about the predicament in Iran, right? Let's hear what she had to say.
I don't know about you, but I am sick of this I'm sick of it. Can't he just behave like a normal human? I mean, honestly, like the president, 3D, yes, shut up. Shut up about that. You don't threaten to wipe out an entire civilization. We're talking about civilians just casually in a social media post. You know, like I am the first to try to understand Trump and his strategy and to not freak out over his weird social media posts and language that is loose and incendiary. Truly, I've lived with it for 10 plus years. I learned it the hard way when I was on the receiving end of it for 9 months. And truly, I think that was a gift to me in many ways because it helped me really come to understand what he does with his social media. But this is completely irresponsible and disgusting. This is wrong. It's wrong. He should not be doing it. I don't care that it's his negotiation tactic is to kill an entire country full of civilians, men, women, and children. An American president so that the Strait of Hormuz will be opened. It's just wrong. It's not hard to say it. It's not hard to recognize it. I wish he would stop doing this.
For the record, some of you will remember Megyn Kelly defending the concept of pedophilia in an effort to justify Trump's allegiance with Jeffrey Epstein. She did that famously, right? So you might be asking yourself why this is a bridge too far. And to all of you, I say, sorry, that's not what I say. To all of you, I say, it's because Israel is so unpopular that it's becoming unpopular in the only resilient base of support for Israel in this country. Not Jews, mind you. Many of you might think Jews are the most supportive of Israel. It's not correct. This is not the correct assessment for two reasons. Number one, not that many Jews. Okay. Number two, even Jews are split on the issue of Israel and defending Israel. There's one group, however, that is massive and has outsized influence in the base of support of the Republican Party. And they, at least until recently, were not split on the issue of Israel. And I say recently because there's a fissure there as well. And that is evangelicals, white evangelicals. Okay? Now white evangelicals are also separating themselves from Israel. And it feels like Donald Trump is the last to notice, but these guys are noticing it. So they know the ship is sinking, okay? And they're pulling out.
Like, he can't negotiate without doing this? What does that say about him? What does that say about the position that our country is in right now in these negotiations? He's got to say this. He can't be a dignified, strong leader without threatening a bunch of war crimes.
Yeah, no, that's it. She knows the Iran war is unpopular. It will be reflected on in an unpopular way. And so she's pulling out.
Learn it.
I can't believe I find myself agreeing with every word of this from Megyn Kelly. Thank you, Megyn Kelly, for saying what everyone is thinking. She went on Piers Morgan and also continued this rant against Donald Trump. But what's really frustrating to someone like myself is, what are the top Democrats doing in this moment? Right? What are the top Democrats doing in this moment? Republicans are, because either because of their loyalty to Donald Trump or because of their theological justifications for, attaching themselves to whatever Israel's ambitions are still very supportive of Israel, right? But the Democrats don't have such considerations. As a matter of fact, Democrats have completely dropped Israel off a map. They're saying cut ties with Israel, right? And unfortunately, the National Democratic Party is not presenting those needs, is not representing themselves as responsive to those needs. And that's very frustrating. Part of the reason why it's obviously frustrating to me personally is because one of the manifestations of their inability to address this issue has led to them attacking me aggressively. Okay? This creates a massive information vacuum. It creates a massive messaging vacuum where the top line, the top line figureheads are always going to be the people that have the most credibility on this issue are always going to be the Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Megyn Kelly. It's up because for years they've gotten unlimited support from the base. Not only have they been legitimized, they've gotten mainstream approval from the base. So they already have an established legitimacy with the rank and file of the party. So now they can pick up all of the other people on top of that from the center and from the left. And they are doing that right now. They're doing that at this moment. Okay? Someone like myself, on the other hand, has been consistently outcast from the base, cast aside, pushed aside, yelled at, been presented as a pariah figure, or never really looked at all until the 2024 election happened and the failures were very obvious. And the Democratic Party and the liberal media apparatus was desperately trying to find a Joe Rogan equivalent, only to then turn around and be like, oh, we didn't like the Joe Rogan thing at all, actually. Shut the f*** on. You are a danger to the party, okay? The Democratic establishment needs a hard pivot starting yesterday on Israel. Unfortunately, still not there yet. Meanwhile, the worst people, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and Megyn Kelly, are expressing the majority opinion, self-destructive and political incompetence for what? See, here's the issue, okay? Here's the other problem here. Here's the other issue. When people like Bassem Youssef and other prominent figures that are on the anti-Zionist, anti-Israel side actually lean into these figures, like Candace Owens, like Tucker Carlson, when Norm Finkelstein leans into these figures like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, you have to understand something. From their calculation, Israel is far more dangerous right now. And it's true because from their perspective, they see some of these people look at, really horrible ideals, dangerous ideals, like anti-Semitism and bigotry of other sorts as somewhat irrelevant as opposed to the real danger that is currently slaughtering people. Okay? That argument, there is legitimacy to that argument, right? It's like the equation between Randy Fine and Nick Fuentes, right? Randy Fine and Nick Fuentes have all of the same opinions. All of the same opinions, except Randy Fine is pro-Israel and Nick Fuentes is anti-Israel. And if you look at a figure like Randy Fine and you look at a figure like Nick Fuentes, okay, the reality of the matter is, given that they are literally identical in every opinion, Nick Fuentes' anti-Israel opinion, especially at a time when Israel is slaughtering people by the tens of thousands and taking over other countries, and on top of that, like goading America into going and waging war in Iran and destroying global markets, that gives a competitive edge to Nick Fuentes over Randy Fine. And Randy Fine is a sitting congressman. It's unbelievable. This is not a defense of Nick Fuentes, but this is to try to explain to you the calculation that people are making, right? I thought Nick Fuentes isn't anti-Israel, he's anti-Jewish. I mean, he is. He's both. He's both. Emphasis on sitting, yes. A very big seat, but he's sitting nonetheless. This is a real issue, okay? This is a real issue. And it's the exact same issue that took place in the 2024 election, where Kamala Harris said, Iran is our number one enemy, and I will make sure that we protect Israel against Iran. She said those words, right? While the administration that she was a part of was continuing the genocide of Palestinians that she refused to acknowledge with the words necessary. She said she was going to have the most lethal military. When she presented herself as this person, Trump had an opportunity to lie about being the peace candidate. And I stressed that over and over again. I said, Donald Trump is lying, but Democrats are giving him the option to lie. Then Liz Cheney comes into play. Kamala Harris and Liz Cheney are parading around. They get a Dick Cheney endorsement last second, leaning into the idea that the Democrats are going to be the pro-war party. And while Donald Trump himself was never anti-war, he was able to convince people that he would be the peace candidate, that he would be the anti-war candidate. Okay? They would not have been able to do that if the Democrats had established credibility as the anti-war party. It's that simple, because the Democratic base was demanding a change. They were demanding to bring Israel to heel even back then. Poll after poll showed this reality, and they refused to engage with this sincerely, and they're doing it again. They're going to create an opening for people like Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson to give their credibility that they've developed here, not just amongst Republicans, mind you, credibility with the left, credibility with the center, credibility with the independents and Democratic Party voters. And they're going to lend that credibility to whichever candidate runs next. J.D. Vance is very clearly positioning himself to be that guy, the guy who was constantly, the critical voice against war, quietly trying to stop Donald Trump's excesses from taking place. If you can't see that right now, you're delusional. And the Democrats, regardless of what their base is demanding, refuse to lean into the moral position. They refuse to lean into the majority position. They are trying to throw their electoral chances out the door, and they will present the marginal victories that they might get in the midterm election, because there's a lot of Trump voters out there right now, as a reason for why they don't have to change a damn thing. As we see more and more of the liberal base demand the Democrats fight back, I remind you of this whisper rant from the last night of the DNC, where I issued warnings to the Kamala campaign about pivoting to the right and the inevitability of defeat. They're doing it again. It's unbelievable, dude. They're doing it in real time. New Vance poll. Here's a new poll showing 30% of voters are undecided. Vance versus Newsom, 2028 presidential poll. Vance clears Newsom. Vance versus AOC, new YouGov poll showing Vance defeating both AOC and Newsom in the 2028 presidential poll. Now, these polls are obviously stupid. It's super far out. Apparently, Mehdi and Bassem discuss if Tucker can be trusted. Is this a full video or just a 5-minute clip? Okay. War for the Epstein class. Bassem Youssef and Mehdi on Iran, Greater Israel, and Candace Owens. AOC's surprising, but you were so vindicated on Vance versus Newsom. AOC's biggest problem right now is that she's quiet. She's not always out, and she's not always. Why do you gloss over AOC losing to Vance? Because while AOC has been one of the best Democrats, one of the best politicians in general on the issue of Palestine, AOC calling Israel an apartheid state in 2021, and consistently being a voice, an Israel critic in Congress, because of the way that she carries herself, because she's sometimes afraid to be at the front of the line, because she doesn't want to get yelled at, and because of her responsiveness to these groups, right? She oftentimes is not putting herself out there as a leader. Okay? It's unfortunate. You have to be clear, you have to be convincing, and you have to be bold, and you have to be brave. But that is precisely the reason why the polls reflect her losing to someone as bad as J.D. Vance currently. Now, that might change. That will change if she chooses to seize the opportunity, if she leans into that lane, right? But even in this community, there's a reason why anytime we bring up AOC, and this is something that Michael from Taiwan has to deal with as well. Whenever people like myself or Michael from Taiwan bring up AOC, a lot of people go, she's AOCIA, she's so bad on this issue and stuff. And then the alternatives that a lot of people present as like being much better on these issues is Ro Khanna. And I like Ro Khanna, right? I like Ro Khanna a lot. Ro Khanna has been infinitely more responsive than the overwhelming majority of congresspersons, okay? Ro Khanna rides for me. I ride for Ro Khanna. When you look at the actual votes, like Ro Khanna has a much longer track record of defending Israel than AOC in his votes. And even as recently as a couple months ago, AOC's never voted to fund weapons to Israel, right? But you wouldn't know that because Ro Khanna is a lot more bold and a lot more aggressive openly with the way that he communicates. He's responsive. He goes out there, he goes on shows, he appears, he's constantly in the media. He's had very high profile legislative victories, one of the most consequential being the Epstein file reveal. That was huge, okay? Going out and linking up with Thomas Massie and demanding and then successfully pressuring Trump to vote instead of vetoing this popular legislation that everyone wanted, which led to people losing their jobs like Pam Bondi. That's huge for Ro Khanna. He deserves the praise. He deserves the praise for that. Right now, in AOC's shoes, like I can't, I can't read her mind, right? But in her shoes, I would be out and about, movement building, putting myself out there as a leader, okay? Doing the Ro Khanna method, being on as many shows as possible, being approachable, being endlessly transparent, okay, and getting after it, while also simultaneously propping up a lot of candidates that will back her in the long run. Whether it be Plattner, whether it be Abdullah Syed, whether it be all of the left flank candidates that Bernie is propping up as well, sometimes even going against her party, her own party, that is actually over and over again. I mean, the oversight committee battle was a clear-cut indication that leaning into the party and behaving as a loyal soldier of the party is not going to give you the benefits that you deserve, right? It's not happening.
Has shocked you most or surprised you most about the Epstein saga?
The blatant gaslighting. I think they're either blackmailed.
I
think they're even blackmailed.
First of all, you can't blackmail Donald Trump. He has no shame. The man's in the Epstein files. What would you blackmail him with?
When we talk about stuff that's happening in the world and then you get called anti-Semitic, I have a problem with that because basically you're calling out the truth. The truth now is anti-Semitic.
Bassem, why can't you be careful then in your language? What, are you doing it for clicks?
I'm not saying that my reaction is wrong.
Oh, this is just the Tucker stuff? Okay.
The Owens and Tucker Carlson.
Because they've said some horrific things over the years.
So what? I mean,
why don't you like Ben Shapiro?
I mean, Piers Morgan has said the horrible things over the years.
He's not said anything close to what Tucker Carlson has said about Muslims, about Arabs, about immigrants.
And why can't we be strategic and use their platforms?
They can.
Yeah, but like
some people do.
You don't like that. You don't like.
No, it's not that I don't like it. It's that my worry is that for the sake of one important issue, Gaza is a huge issue. We're giving a pass to these people to launder some of their other objectionable. Like I said just now, they're not disowning Trump. Actually, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'm going to have to go home and take a shower after this. I give her credit out of all of them because she actually picked a fight with Trump. She gave up her political career. So she actually put her money where her mouth is, to use a phrase. The rest of Tucker doesn't say a single anti-Trump word. He acts like the war in Iran came down from the skies. We wouldn't be in this war in Iran had Tucker not promoted Trump for president, had Candace not promoted Trump for president, had Megyn Kelly not promoted Trump for president. We're in this war, Joe Rogan, Theo Von, all these guys. Did you watch Joe and Theo the other day saying they're terrorist Israel? I can't believe we're in this war. You guys gave us Trump. You said Kamala Harris is going to do war. Trump is anti-war. How did that work out?
I think it's all an act.
Well, whatever it is, they got their act fucking wrong.
Well, they're actually not. They're doing very well, and they're reaching a lot of people, and they're affecting a lot of people.
But they're affected badly. I could argue that Joe Rogan helped Donald Trump win, so Joe Rogan is the reason we're in the war, Iran. If I wanted to, I'm just saying. If I took that argument to its logical conclusion,
do you think Joe Rogan would help? Like the Democrats, they would never stand up for his opponent. What was her name?
Kamala Harris.
He
was a Bernie guy once, but then he got red pilled.
She is
then
that
he got
useless.
red pilled. Maybe
she's that useless.
But you're missing my point. My point is these people helped give us Trump. And that's why I have a problem, because they don't. I only respect the people who own it. If you're Marjorie Taylor Greene, I was wrong about Trump. I was wrong about fine. Right? But if you're like acting, hey, how did this all happen? This war in Iran's bad. I can't believe they're doing it. Hey, it happened because you told people falsely that Trump would be anti-war.
So what's your point?
My point is, you asked me why I don't like them. I'm telling you why.
The problem is like Mehdi looks like a lib in this situation, because for a lot of people, if they're just like, bro, Israel is slaughtering people, who gives a what people have said in the past, like, we're desperate for allies here. Yeah, they don't look at that situation and think like, I'm just going to cast aside people like this. Especially because a lot of people are read as earnest on this issue, right? Ta-Nehisi quotes on Tucker Carlson and other right-wing figures vocally criticizing Israel. These people will turn on you in a second. I agree with Ta-Nehisi on this, right? Ta-Nehisi on this. The key, I've been thinking a lot about the time period in light of this rise of Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene as right-wing figures who are being very vocal about Palestine. They're talking about Israel. That's a very important correction. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't want to be too... See, here's the problem. Being anti-Israel is being pro-Palestine. It's true. Okay? A lot of these guys won't stand with the Palestinian resistance, but they're anti-Israel. They'll say anti-Israel things. It's two sides of the same coin at the end of the day. I'm sorry, I don't want to be too... No, it's fair. I'm just curious how you're thinking about this in the present tense. What's the through line between what happened then and what's happening now? First of all, it's really bad. I emphasize the Israel part because my support for Palestine, my support for Palestinian life, it's not about support for Palestine and Palestinian life per se, just like, and it took me a while to get to this, my support for black life and for black people is not for black people or black life per se. I just believe human beings are entitled to certain dignities and certain things in their lives. It's a pretty baseline thing for me. Unfortunately, some of the people with the loudest, most cutting critiques of Zionism and of Israel right now don't share that baseline belief. I think it's really important to say this. These people will turn on you in a second. But to answer your question, there's an obvious moral problem here. Again, I saw it at the DNC. You watch these people get up 60 years after Fannie Lou Hamer's delegation was not allowed to be seated, and they won't let Palestinians talk. They think they can kill this critique, but the critique is true. The only control you have is whether the critique comes out of a place of humanism, of shared values and the significance of importance of human life, or whether it's allied with one of the oldest evils in the history of the West. You're not going to suppress this stuff. The days of doing that are over. There are people in the Democratic Party, which I think is a separate thing from the movement, and certainly from my own politics, who, to this day, and it sounds insane, think they can get away with telling you that the earth is flat and supporting a system that is designed around that logic. It's not going to work. People aren't dumb. He's not wrong. The reason why I'm very critical of Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes and even Marjorie Taylor Greene is because I have universal principles that I apply consistently to all issues. Okay? They might be earnest when they are talking about Palestine. They might be reading the room and are cynical grifters. Doesn't matter. They do not have universal humanitarian principles, okay? But it doesn't matter to most people anyway, because they can make it seem like they have universal humanitarian principles by addressing this one issue that no one in a position of power and prominence will. It's that simple. These are the very same people that want to purge every migrant from the American boundaries. Okay? That's it. They want to do that. These are people who are not speaking about the issue of Israel and Palestine from a perspective of caring about the humanity and dignity and sovereignty of the Palestinians. And you can hear that in their message. And in some respects, they're less of a threat than someone like myself. That's precisely the reason why they don't get the same bipartisan attacks that I do. You want to know why? Because Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, or any number of these different people will never sit there and explain to you that oppressed people have a God-given, internationally recognized legal right to militarily oppose systems such as apartheid. They won't say that. They will never say that. Their position on Israel is that Israel is a spoiler that's ruining the power of empire. How dare those Jews get to dominate our America, the most impressive superpower that has ever existed in the history of mankind. Okay? That's their perspective. That's the way that they approach the issue. And you can kind of tell if you are a real one, if you've been around, if you've been an anti-Zionist for many, many years prior to October 7. But even then, why is someone like Norm Finkelstein making that calculation and going on Candace Owens' show? Well, from his perspective, it doesn't matter. It's a massive audience, and it would be good for that massive audience to hear from the likes of Norm Finkelstein. Aren't you for infinite rehabilitation of people? Absolutely, I am. Absolutely. What do I always say, though? I carve out a special place for propagandists. I carve out a special place for people who are professionally saying this kind of stuff. And the reason why I carve out a special place is they can still change. They can still reform as well. You have to be extra careful to hear what their message truly is. We are not representatives of single issues. No human being is. No human being can be, unless they're obviously directly under the crosshairs, directly under fire. If you're Palestinian and in that instance, obviously, emancipation is your primary focus, but that's not what we're talking about right now. No group is a monolith, and no human being is a representative of one singular issue. You have to look at all of the other issues that they advance, okay? From the perspective of Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens especially, or Nick Fuentes especially, it's very obvious that they might say the right things on Israel, but ask them about immigrants, and you will hear basically Zionist arguments, the arguments that you would hear from the average ultra-Zionist living in Israel, and the way that they talk about Palestinians. These guys talk about Mexicans and Guatemalans. It's that simple. That's what Ta-Nehisi Coates is talking about here. But it is my universal principles that I apply consistently that cause me to not only be an avowed anti-Zionist for many, many years, while all of these people were pro-Israel unconditionally, okay, while also continuously combating anti-Semitism as well, even if, obviously, the growth of anti-Semitism in the United States of America should never be used as an equivocation for why we can't speak out against Israel, okay? And it is ultimately the way that this form of discrimination works in contemporary American society is still obviously nowhere near as consequential as anti-blackness, anti-brown, anti-immigrant sentiment, Islamophobia, right? It's not the same. Not the same at all. It could become the same, but currently it's not. Currently it manifests itself in personal discrimination. Okay? it manifests itself in the likelihood that there could be anti-Semitic attacks, like a higher percentage of anti-Semitic attacks, and the likelihood that they could happen. That's real. That's real anti-Semitism. Okay. However, there's still a lot of institutional stigma when someone is being anti-Semitic. No such institutional stigma exists for other minority groups. It doesn't. There is a structural reason for that. And a big part of that is because anti-Semitism has always been used as a cudgel, as a weapon against criticisms of Israel for the last, multiple decades, and quite successfully, if I might add. And that's precisely the reason why it has institutional stigma, unlike anything else, because it corresponded for years and years to the State Department goals of Israel being the unsinkable aircraft carrier in a region that is resource rich. Okay? That's the real reason. If there was a similar situation where we could place the same level of confidence in Saudi Arabia as we have done so to Israel, Islamophobia could be, and it's ironic to say this right now, and it's impossible to think about this hypothetical because that's just not the case, and that will never be the case, especially in the aftermath of the global war on terror. It's virtually impossible to envision this hypothetical. But if Saudi Arabia was as trustworthy an ally from the perspective of WASPs in the United States of America and in the Western world, then you would see Islamophobia being the same danger. If Saudi Arabia was, doing the genocide in Yemen, and then people were doing genocides to non-Muslim populations even, and then people were turning around and saying like, oh, dude, what is Saudi Arabia doing? You would see a lot of, Council of Islam style groups prop up talking about the dangers of Islamophobia, right? Criticizing Saudi Arabia is criticizing Islam itself. After all, Mecca is right there. It's the holiest site. The Kaaba, the holiest site for billions of Muslims, is right there in Saudi Arabia. You dare disparage the good name of Saudi Arabia? How Islamophobic. I feel like I would have had better tools discussing conversations with Jewish people if I had someone like you to follow way back in the 2000s. Wow, Enfant Door giving me praise. What's going on? Hell has frozen over Enfant Door with praise. Oh my God. Thank you, Enfant Door. I do really appreciate it, especially on an issue that pertains to defending marginalized communities. Wow. I do appreciate it. I appreciate your honesty, and I appreciate your charitability, and I appreciate that you have admitted in the past sometimes when you're, unnecessarily antagonistic. Here's another piece of commentary from Tucker Carlson, reported by Asen, senior digital editor for Midas Touch. 31,000 likes. A lot of liberals leaning into what Tucker Carlson is saying.
Time not to end it, not to set up an adversarial relationship, but to set up a healthy conventional relationship where Israel can pay its own bills and fund its own military and act within the constraints imposed on it by its own economy and population. That's what normal countries do. Most countries live with neighbors that don't like them, with whom they have testy relationships, but they make accommodations because they have no choice. There's no country in the world that acts with total impunity because it knows a much larger country will backstop it no matter what it does. That just doesn't exist in the natural world because it's not natural. It's grotesque. And it's terrible for the United States. And now it's obvious.
Yeah. I mean, banger. No notes. He's right. He's absolutely right about that. Now, of course, part of the problem is Tucker Carlson can also use Israel as the primary reason for why America's done all this stuff that's like bad and dangerous and violent and expensive. And he has a far better message than someone like I do on this issue, because you can always turn around and say, Hasan, you say America bad, you hate America. You can't do that with Tucker Carlson, no matter how hard you try. One, he's established a lot more credibility on the pro-America side by being one of the most prominent Republican spokespeople for decades. Republicans own patriotism. They can Trump himself is a great example of this. Trump himself has run around straight up saying, like, I like my war heroes not captured, about John McCain. He said some of the things in his 2016 run that, I get clipped for. But it doesn't matter because Republicans own the lane of patriotism in the minds of many Americans, and therefore they have a lot more freedoms to say whatever they want that's critical of America without people saying, oh, you hate America. Tucker Carlson has that same advantage as well. And on top of that, Tucker Carlson is not making the full correct assessment here. Can't he use that same argument against supporting Gaza, that we shouldn't support it because they need to exist on their own? Yes, he can. And Tucker Carlson's framework here is to basically couch all of American excesses as the responsibility of perfidious Israel. Let's not say Jews, because he won't say that, right? Because he's too smart to say that quiet part out loud, right? But like he's basically saying it's either Israeli blackmail, Nick Fuentes will say Jewish blackmail, whatever, right? That's pressuring the American administrators into taking these sorts of actions. And that is a much better message, a much more convincing message for the average American who doesn't want to see that America is ultimately responsible for a lot of this stuff because our politicians are backed by corporations. Our politicians are backed by the same vested interests that corporations have and foreign lobbies have. Do you understand? Tucker Carlson can just say, oh, we went to Iraq. Here, Iraq is the best example of this. Tucker Carlson can sit there and say, we went to Iraq because of Israel. That's bullshit. But it's actually a narrative that a lot of Americans it's a narrative that a lot of Americans can get on board with because it takes away the responsibility from us, right? Because Americans don't want to think that our government might be making the wrong decisions. Our government is not interested in defending us. Our government is a representation of us. So our government can't fail. It can only be made to fail. It can't make objectively violent decisions. It can only be convinced into making objectively violent and unnecessary and unproductive and wasteful decisions. This is something I've warned against, right? This is something I warned against quite a bit. Not because I have some, Jewish exceptionalism in my heart or whatever and want to spare the feelings of Jewish chatters or Jews that are watching who might be convinced. I truly believe that Judaism and Zionism are separate, even if Zionist forces have actively convinced many American Jews and Jews in the West that it has to be the civic nationalist religion of Reform Jews in particular, even if that message has been very convincing, okay? But the very fact that that propaganda needs to exist implies that Jews are not monolithic. And the very fact that there are still disagreements around what Israel means to American Jews implies that even in spite of that propaganda, it's still failing to achieve monolithic status. While yes, all the Jewish institutions, from synagogues to Hillel to Chabad to all of the different Jewish advocacy organizations are almost singularly invested in defending the nation state of Israel. Obviously, Jews are not as singularly focused on it at all. But it's this is why I say, Jews also have a very important responsibility here to make that separation, to demand that separation internally from their own communities. That's important to do. But as long as Jewish Zionists openly defend the state of Israel and say that all of its critics are anti-Semitic, as long as Jewish advocacy groups that masquerade as Jewish advocacy groups but are actually just Israel advocacy groups continue to operate with that singular focus on defending the interests and the integrity of the nation state of Israel, Americans are going to learn the wrong lesson. You've taught Americans that there is a real conflation between Zionism and Judaism. You've spent millions of dollars making said conflation, okay? You've taught Americans for decades that Israel is the Jewish state. And everything Israel does, it does for Jews. And Jews love Israel in return, no matter where they are. And that message was fine as long as people were not paying attention to what Israel was doing. As long as people were not aware, of this relationship and how much Israeli lobbyists actually get to not only dictate American foreign policy, which is now we're in the worst version of that, where Israel is in the driver's seat of our foreign policy, right? And there is a very real divergence in their interest versus ours. But also, now that people are aware of Israel and they don't like it, they don't like this loyalty pledge that people have to take. They don't like this unlimited support that people are making, their politicians are making to the state of Israel. Now, that conflation between Zionism and Judaism that has allowed all these Jewish advocacy groups to masquerade as Jewish advocacy groups while simultaneously defending Israel, that conflation could have been used as a weapon to wield against critics of Israel for the longest time. Now that conflation is a dangerous one. It was a false conflation from the start. But now, not only is it a false conflation, but it's also a dangerous one that has taught many Americans who are not Jewish and have never been around Jews that this is all Jews give a shit about. This is why it's exceptionally important. If you care about anti-Semitism, if you're Jewish and you care about your children, if you care about your family members, you have an additional responsibility, unlike ever before, to make that separation be known, to demand it from your communities, to get together with other like-minded Jews, and to absolutely rid your organizations of this conflation. Because at the end of the day, I'm only an outsider, let's be real, and an outsider from the worst possible group. I'm a Muslim outsider. And Zionism is a very racist ideology, and its primary focus, its primary outgroup are Muslims and Arabs and Palestinians. So no matter what happens, the reality of the matter is it's like a black person trying to convince a white supremacist not to be white supremacist. It's just not going to work. It's going to be very difficult. I have very little opportunity to do this, especially for someone who is much older. Yeah, Daryl Davis is the guy. Thank you, chatters. But that's an outlier. Daryl Davis is an outlier. It has to come from within. On the left is ADL declaring it is anti-Semitic to say Israel pulled the U.S. into this war. On the right is New York Times reporting that Netanyahu directly persuaded Trump to attack Iran. Anti-Semitism is real. Thanks to ADL's crying wolf, nobody will care when it really matters.
Trump watched us learn it. And so what led Trump, at 79 years old, to sit in there in that situation room when Bibi Netanyahu was seated as an equal?
Yeah.
Trump didn't even sit at the head of the table. Trump sat at the side of the table, and Bibi was across from him as an equal in the American Situation Room. What led him to sit there and buy what that guy was selling, hook, line, and sinker?
I wonder.
When every other president was able to see through that liar. What was it? Because he was told the next day by our own top advisors, from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs to the Secretary of State to the vice president, that these are lies and that these objectives are not going to be attainable. Don't believe him. We might be able to wipe out the Ayatollah, not regime change, Ayatollah. And we might be able to decimate some portion of their missiles and their military. Okay, that's true. But the goals as stated by Trump when we actually did pull the trigger were all over the board. And to this moment, he's pushing the BS claim that we affected regime change. No, we didn't. It's the same regime, just different players. There isn't somebody more moderate in there at all. We have no reason to believe that. In fact, it looks like the Iranian Revolutionary Guard is in control now, which is far more radical. And the fatwa that had allegedly been issued by the Ayatollah on developing nukes is gone. Iran is more powerful economically. It controls the Strait and now is demanding the lifting of all sanctions against it. And what Trump did with that 10-point plan was go from Monday saying, no, not good, to Tuesday saying, very workable, we can do it, as a means of saving face to bail off of his insane threats about annihilating an entire civilization. So I don't know how we got here, Piers. I'd like to know just as much as anybody else, but all I can think in my head, based on what I've read in the paper, is we got here thanks to Bibi Netanyahu, Lindsey Graham, and Mark Levin. And ultimately President Trump. That's not to take agency away from the president, who was bamboozled. I don't know why. He was too weak to say no. He was too gullible to see through the lie.
Or he's unbelievably pro-Israel and has been since he got $100 million from Sheldon Adelson when he was alive in the 2016 race, where he ended up moving the American embassy to Jerusalem against many decades of American foreign policy not doing that. And then also on top of that, recognized the permanent annexation of Golan Heights, which is Syrian territory, directly at odds with the rest of the world, which no one said a goddamn thing about, and set up Abraham Accords that completely sidestepped Palestinian sovereignty from the conversation and erased Palestinians from the conversation, directly causing, or not causing, but like normalizing openly and publicly relations between Israel and all the fucking Gulf states. Perhaps that's the reason why. And this is all Trump won. This was all in Trump won. Of course he was going to be pro-Israel, even in more consequential terms, on Trump too. I said this for years, mind you, which is very frustrating. It's very frustrating to see people who are like, oh, what's happening? I can't believe Trump would do this right now. You're an adult, okay? You're a adult. Act like it. What do you mean? Even at this moment where you're like, I don't know why Trump did this. We know why Trump did this. Trump has always done this. U.S. President Trump warned Iran against imposing a toll for ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz after Tehran agreed to reopen the crucial route as a part of a 2-week ceasefire. Again, Donald Trump is talking like he holds the cards here. He does not, unless his intelligence has told him that China is aggressively forcing Iran by way of Pakistan to concede on this deal. There's no way Iran is going to do that. And even if China wants Iran to stop, doing this shit, there's no guarantee that they'll stop doing this shit. Iran is a sovereign nation. It's the kind of the whole point of the Iranian revolution, right?